Hi everybody, Adrian Plass here.
Yes, and Bridget. Hello.
And this is number 107 in Sounding the Shallows. We still haven't landed, apparently. And you'll begin to think that our lives are entirely about trains, because I think we talked about trains last week, and I think we talked about them the week before.
About the Bonhoeffer quote, you mean,
that's
about
right,
being
yes.
on the right train or the wrong train or whatever.
Wrong train, yeah.
Now everybody would love to get on a train at all.
Any train at all, yeah. I know. Our daughter and her husband were hoping to go up to Edinburgh this weekend. Whether they've gone or not, we won't know till we hear from them later on. But it's
well, it's a pretty big thing, isn't it? In the UK, it is a big rail strike for a few days, and I'm sure, depending on where you are, what you think, you either think this is inevitable or a seriously bad idea.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that, hasn't it? Depending on which side you're on.
Yeah, it's a way of changing things, isn't it? I was struck by the way recently. I mean, I've got a sort of love affair with trains. Not all of them, but
not all of them.
Well, in the days where you could get a first class seat for what they called a weekend first, and when that first started, it was £5, and I remember the absolute wonderful, luxurious feeling of sitting on one of those first class tables for a £5 and getting coffee and stuff. But more than that, just the feeling of space. So I love. But trains anyway. There's a song from the old days called Slow Trains, about after all the little tracks were closed, and it's a very sad song, which I just heard the other day. All the names of the stations that no longer existed. The other thing that amused me was something about Lord Tennyson. I don't know if there was ever anything really amusing about Lord Tennyson. He was, of course, a very famous poet, but he wrote a line which I've always loved, and I'll read you the line.
Was this to do with trains, then?
Oh, yes, this is
right.
to do with trains. This is the line he wrote. Let the great world spin forever down the ringing grooves of change. I'll read it again. Let the great world spin forever down the ringing grooves of change. And the reason I liked it was because there was a built-in paradox there, wasn't there, that change is somehow, and there is the truth in the paradox, is kind of embedded and yet moving and inevitable. So I liked that. But then I heard, or I read recently, that Tennyson wrote this about the railways, because the railways were starting and they were all becoming big time. And what he hadn't understood was that the railways don't operate in grooves.
Oh,
They're actually rails.
of course.
So his thing about them everything coming down to the world, spinning down the ringing grooves of change, they didn't. You know what a pedant I am.
Yes.
They were on tracks. Anyway,
I was thinking, just before you carry on, Adrian, about, you say you're a pedant. You were telling me, I think it was today or yesterday, you were saying about how you were beginning to feel very strongly about the song Moon River. Now, people who know you well will know that this sort of line of thought is not that strange for an Adrian Plass, but it is for most of the world.
This really isn't worth repeating.
Yeah,
but
well,
all I said was that it's a great song, actually, Moon River. But I suddenly listened to the words the other day, and I noticed that at the beginning, the singer says, "Moon River, wider than a mile, I'm crossing you in style someday," right? So his plan, right, is to cross the river.
Which is a mile wide.
Yeah, and then he sings about going down the river the river.
What does he...
Actually travelling, well, I can't remember, but it's all about travelling down the river. So either he's obsessed with crossing it, or he's obsessed with being in it and going with it. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, when you're looking for rhymes, anything goes sometimes. Anyway, it's a small thing. I forgive Tennyson, and I forgive whoever wrote that song.
You seemed to get quite worked up about it earlier on when you were telling me about it.
No, I forgive them. I really do. Anyway, yeah, so the other thing, thinking about the strikes, or the rail strike, and possibly in the UK here, and other strikes that may well come along, is the never-ending question about, can the end ever justify the means. And I'm not saying that striking is wrong. On the contrary, it can be very right. Sometimes it could be wrong. But it's a way of making change happen. But it's a very complex question. And obviously, I suppose, doesn't it? It depends on who's making the judgment. So over what is right and good and what is not, and what justifies what we do. And when you think about it, I mean, I was trying to think some really great, wonderful things and some really dreadful, evil things have arisen from the same forces for change. And I started my little list, things like, force, physical force, restraint, and religious dogma, and things like that, which in themselves don't have a value perhaps, but they can be used in a very, very wonderfully useful way, or they can be very destructive and cruel, all sorts of things. So it's never change is never really easy, or the way we bring about change. So I was also thinking, don't worry, it's a song, but I'm not going to criticise the song. And it was a John Lennon song, which I'm sure loads of people remember. And in it, there's a line that goes, "Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans."
Right.
And I think maybe we've been a bit like that. That whatever you do, and however much we sit muttering about what we're going to do, there seems to be a sort of narrative in our lives that just proceeds independently of what we fondly believe to be our careful considerations.
Yes, well, that might be more to do with us, I think, than generalities. We've tended to plunge a bit, haven't we, into things.
Well, I like that, yeah.
We've got quite passionately involved with things.
I'll give you an example which you all know about.
Okay.
We always thought or said we will never go to South America, didn't we? And up to about the age of 45, 50, I thought I'll never see it. It's a shame, but I'll never see South America. And then I came home one day, and what did I say to you?
Well, I remember what you said. You said, I think it might be possible that we may be going to Bolivia, which was a bit of a puzzle because neither of us actually knew where Bolivia was. And we had to look it up on the map. I think I'd vaguely thought it was somewhere in Europe. I was thinking about Bulgaria. And
I think I might have had some idea about it being on Eastern Asia. But
it did turn out that you'd met somebody, hadn't you, who'd suggested actually, and it was an amazing trip. It was to do with Toy Box. Phenomenal charity working with street children that I think we've talked about before.
We have, and we went to Central America as well for the same with the same charity. But I never imagined that would happen. It was a fantastic thing, really.
So you mean that when you're sort of going along a steady groove, change often happens through something that comes from the side, rather than
I suppose
plans that you've made.
I suppose so. I suppose
the life is what happens.
Retrospectively, you sort of think, oh well, now I can see how that might have led to that, or that might have led to that. But our fourth child, dear daughter Kate, was a not at all thought, wasn't she? After
she was an after not thought.
After not thought, with three boys, 3 sons. Yeah. And then Kate came along, and I'm not sure we really wanted a 4th child.
Well, it was more to the point.
We would have loved it, whatever it was.
You'd had to stop work. I just got a job to keep us going, and discovering I was pregnant didn't seem like a plan. It turned out to be the most extraordinary blessing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And 20 years ago, I would have said with absolute certainty that I would never have a tattoo. And now, at the age of 70, I went, as people probably may remember, to a tattoo parlour with my oldest son and my daughter, to have a tattoo put on my wrist.
You had a little cross put on your wrist. It hasn't shocked very many people, has it?
Which
has been a bit of a disappointment.
Very, very disappointing.
So the point you're making, what about the tattoo? That I
suppose that you can't predict change. You can't. I meant what I said 20 years ago. I would have said, I will never, ever have a tattoo. Suddenly other things that happen to you, changes in you, relaxations in you, realizations in you, that have been part of the journey, mean it becomes possible to do things you never thought you'd do, or to go places you never thought you'd go, because you're now in a frame of mind, or you've changed to the extent that you can say yes to things, I suppose, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there are always things you think you will never do, as well as things you think you'd love to do, but can't see how you're going to do them. I mean, we've enjoyed the Meatloaf song, haven't we? I would do anything for love, but I won't do that, because we've always wondered what he wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But and I think, I've often thought, well, I would do. I'm sure I've thought I will do anything for God, but I won't do that. And certainly there are some things you have to face the fact that you're not going to do, and that the changes are not going to happen that make it possible, I think. I mean, I have a terrible head for heights, and I know years ago I thought, well, if I joined a climbing club when I was at university, I would overcome my terrible head for heights. But actually I ended up being stuck on the side of the Bristol Gorge more than once, and the people in the club that I joined decided that maybe I didn't have a gift in that area, because if you've got a thing that prevents something happening, then you have to accept, maybe.
But did that make you decide not to try to change other areas, parts of yourself?
Oh, no. Just to accept certain limitations. And I think accepting limitations is fair enough. That's different from principles, isn't it?
Yeah. I think the problem for Christians, I mean, perhaps with all religions, I don't know, but Christians, the issue gets complicated by that concept of principles, because it seems perfectly reasonable to most sane human beings that you acquire a faith, say, you learn about the leader of the faith, you learn about what he did and what he was like and what he said, and you say, right, I've got that now, I know how to be now, I'd never do that, I always do this, I make sure, and you try to live that life, but actually, if you are, when you sign up, if I can put it like that, oh God would be very annoyed with me. If you sign up to follow Jesus, what you're signing up for is not to be a person who always or never does anything. You're signing up other than to follow him. And in the old days, and I know we've said this before, in the old days we said, what would Jesus do? We come to a fork in the road, or a situation that needs a decision. We say, what would Jesus have done? And I think we really do need to move on from that to a place where we say, what is Jesus doing here and now, and how do I join in with that? And there will come a time, I think, when suddenly you have to decide you're going to do something you never expected. And going back to Wurmbrand's train, where it's no good getting on the wrong train and then running back the right way down the corridor. You may be asked to go to the next carriage but one up in the train to be involved in something that you never thought your life would involve. And Peter in the New Testament with his visions of animals in the having to eat these strange creatures. I mean, it happens. Yeah. And you have to face it.
I think that's important, really, because I think, going back to the trains and being on the right train, if you start relaxing too much into thinking, well, I am on the right train, after all, I go to church and I believe in God, and I, I'm not going to change from that. I'm quite comfortable there. You could be sitting in quite comfortable seats, looking out the window, and enjoying the fact that you're on the right train without ever noticing anything, like you say, that could be happening further up the train that you might need to get involved in. You might need to change. You might need to, be quite uncomfortable.
Yeah, you might also walk up the train, just to continue our
We're
eternal
in the
metaphor.
train. Yes.
You might come across someone really enjoying having his rather nice bottle of wine, whereas you've decided at some point that on this train you really don't drink.
Well, that's a good example.
And there you are, faced with the fact that someone on the same train as you feels completely free.
Yeah.
I mean, leave aside the dangers and the problems connected with that, but judging other people is not part of being on the right train, is it?
No.
It's really not.
I think we're going to have to leave the trains. I'm becoming a bit like Thomas the Tank Engine now. I'm thinking, well, some people think they're on the right train, but other people are on the wrong train or on the wrong track or on the. I think.
Well, just quickly on the train thing.
All right, we'll stay on the train just a little bit longer.
The business about facing something different, but within the right place. Jesus and Mary and Martha, who I always go on about, they want him to come and heal their brother, and he doesn't come. And in any ordinary situation now, someone might say to someone in Jesus' position, look, these are people you love, you must go and help them. I know you've got other things you have to do, but go and do it. But there is obviously a very solid reason why he can't do that. He's on the right train, they're on the right train, but they have some sorting out to do to understand how that could be. And so do we often. We're faced with things that seem unfair, terribly unfair sometimes. So that's right.
It's not easy. It is not easy to be open to change at all times, to be open to leaving aside the things that you have felt safe with. I think we've said before, haven't we, that when you're young, you need to know what you think, so you jump onto all sorts of things in order to have a little confidence in what you think and who you are. And I was struck, last week you mentioned Thomas Loyola.
Yes,
not
I'm
Ignatius
never going to be allowed
Loyola.
to forget it.
Yes, but it was somebody responded to that, partly to put you right, quite reasonably, but also just mentioning...
Because he is called...
He's called Ignatius Loyola. But mentioning the prayer that we talked about, to seek for no reward, save that of knowing that we do thy will. And she reminded me of a prayer by somebody called Thomas, which I think may have been where the confusion came, Adrian.
Yeah, that'll be it.
Because
no, it wasn't. It wasn't.
But Thomas Merton's prayer, when I read this in this email, I don't know, it just caught in me, really. I could say this prayer comfortably instead of feeling too challenged beyond anything I could change and do. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself, and the fact that I think I'm following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you.
Yeah.
I found that very moving, really, Adrian, because that kind of fits in with so much, really.
It's very liberating, isn't it?
It's very liberating, you know. I don't know.
You feel you'd like to be with him on the journey, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And she also mentions another prayer which does come from Ignatius Loyola, which, again, Adrian, I found very helpful. Take, Lord, and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, and my entire will, all I have and call my own. You've given all to me. To you, Lord, I return it. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. Give me only your love and your grace, and that is enough for me. And that, I think, was such a beautiful prayer again. you know, it almost comes back, doesn't it, Adrian, to what you've talked about with John Wimber saying to be small change in his pocket. Everything is yours. Do with it what you will. But that doesn't mean that we hang on to it and we think, no, this is mine. It means being open to change, being open to possibilities, doesn't it?
Yeah. Because actually, that change can be gold, can't it?
Well, that was something I was thinking about this week. I was talking to you about, wasn't it? Thinking about this small change thing, which has meant so much to both of us, hasn't it? A relaxation that we don't have to do big things and be more than we are, that God can use us. We're just small change. But then I found myself thinking there's a danger with that, because we may be small change for God to use, but that doesn't mean to say that we're a few tuppences.
Right.
We actually have gold.
Yeah.
You know, the thing that you've talked about a lot, about the talents being, you know, we have a richness of gold.
Gold of love
and that's pretty special.
Yeah.
And if we start thinking that way round, then I think change will happen without us even being aware of it. Because if we're concentrating on where can the gold of love, where can we give it out to, we'll stop faffing around and worrying about whether we're changing and whether we're...
Yeah, and also you don't really have to worry about amounts, because when it comes to loving and caring, there will be plenty more supplied if you run out. Which is the blessing and the curse for Christians, really, that the job goes on, the task continues, the change that God wants to bring about is happening all the time and all around us, and I feel really privileged to be a bit of that, or to be allowed sometimes to be part of that. So perhaps occasionally I'd like to complain, but broadly speaking, I'd rather be on this train than any other one. Anyway, I hope people get their trains next week.
Yes. I think, you know, Adrian, I can't help thinking there'll be some people thinking that you're talking about blinking trains. I would like to get on a train. I would like to be on the right train. I would like to be going where I'm supposed to be going and get there on time. That would be very nice, thank you. So maybe next time we talk to you, we'll just leave trains.
Okay. I think you'd be more suited to a steam train.
I like steam trains. I don't mind steam trains.
Anyway, okay, no more about trains.
No more trains.
No more trains.
No,
okay,
no.
all right. But thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.